Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 1, Text number 7 with no purport. And no purport. Anyway, so we'll read several verses. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Shaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat. So I'll try my best to recite the verse, text number 7. Tosha Pratosha Santosho Madra Shantir Idashpati Idma Kavir Vidu Svana Surdevo Rochano Drishat. The 12 boys born of Yajna and Dakshina were named, nice names, Tosha, Pratosha, Santosha, Bhadra, Shanti, Idashpati, Idma, Kavi, Vibhu, Svana, Sudeva, and Rochana. Text number 8. Tushita namate deva asan swayambhuvantare Marichi Mishra Rishayo Yagya Sura Ganeshwaraha. During the time of Swayambhuva Manu, these sons all became the demigods, collectively named the Tushitas. Marichi became the head of the 7 rishis. Yagya became the king of the demigods, Indra. Purport. During the life of Swayambhuva Manu, 6 kinds of living entities were generated from the demigods known as the Tushitas, and from the sages headed by Marichi, and from the descendants of Yagya, king of the demigods. All of them expanded their progeny to observe the order of the Lord, to fill the universe with living entities. These 6 kinds of living entities are known as Manus, Devas, Manu Putras, Ashashvataram, Angsashvataras, Sureshwaras, and there we go, and Rishis. Yagya, being the incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, became the leader of the demigods, Indra. Text 9. Priyavatotana Bhavnao Anuputra Mahau Jasau Tat Putra Pautra Naptrinam Anuvritam Tad Antaram. Swayambhuvamanu's two sons, Priyavrata and Uttanapada, became powerful kings, and their sons and grandsons spread all over the three worlds during that period. Text 10. Devahutim adat tata Gardamaya Maya Majam Mano Tat Sambandhi Sruta Prajam Bhavata Gatato Mama. Bunch of pictures. My dear son, Swayambhuva Manu handed over his very dear daughter, Devahuti, to Kardama Muni. I have already spoken to you about them, and you have heard about them almost in full. Text 11. Dakshaya Brahmaputraya Prasutim Bhagavan Manu Prayachad Yat Krita Sargas Trilokyam Vidato Mahan. Swayambhuva Manu handed his daughter Prasuti to the son of Brahma named Daksha, who was also one of the progenitors of the living entities. The descendants of Daksha are spread throughout the three worlds. Very active man. Text 12. Yat Kardama Sutta Prokta Brahmarshi Patnaya Tatam Prasuti Prasavam Brochamanam Nibodame. You have already been informed about the 9 daughters of Kardama Muni who were handed over to the 9 different sages. I shall now describe the descendants of those 9 daughters. Please hear from me. Purport. 3rd canto has already described how Kardama Muni begot 9 daughters within Devahuti, and how all the daughters were later handed over to great sages like Rishi, Atri, and Vashishta. Text 13. Patni Marichestu Kala Susave Kardamatmaja Kashyapam Purniman Mamcha Yayor Apurritam Jagat. Kardamuni's daughter Kala, who was married to Marichi, gave birth to 2 children whose names were Kashyapa and Purnima. Their descendants are spread all over the world. And text 14. Purnima Sutta Virajam Vishvagam cha parantapa Devakulyam Hare Padam Yochad Yabot Sarit Dvija Diva. My dear Vidura, of the two sons, Kashyapa and Purnima, Purnima begot 3 children, namely Viraja, Vishvaga, and Devakulya. Of these 3, Devakulya was the water which washed the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead and which later on transformed into the Ganges of the heavenly planets. Wow, what a service. Purport. Of the 2 sons of Kashyapa and Purnima, herein Purnima's descendants are described. An elaborate description of these descendants will be given in the 6th canto. It is also understood herein that Devakulya is the presiding deity of the river Ganges, which comes down from the heavenly planets to this planet and is accepted to be sanctified because it touched the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hari. One more verse in long purport. Atre patnya nasuyatrin yagye suryashava Uryashasa Sutan Datam Durvasasam Somam Atmesha Brahma Sambhavan. Anusuya, the wife of Atri Muni, gave birth to 3 very famous sons, Soma, Dattatreya, and Durvasa, who were partial representations of Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva, and Lord Brahma. Soma was a partial representation of Lord Brahma. Dattatreya was a partial representation of Lord Vishnu, and Durvasa was a partial representation of Lord Shiva. Purport. In this verse we find the words Atma, Isha, Brahma, Sambhavan. Atma means the super soul or Vishnu. Isha means Lord Shiva. And Brahma means the 4-headed Lord Brahma. The 3 sons born of Anasuya, Dattatreya, Durvasa, and Soma, were born as partial representations of these 3 demigods. Atma is not in the category of the demigods or living entities because he is Vishnu. Therefore, he is described as Vibhinangsha Bhutanam. The Supersoul Vishnu is the seed-giving father of all living entities, including Brahma and Lord Shiva. Another meaning of the word Atma may be accepted in this way. The principle, who is the Supersoul in every Atma, or one may say, the soul of every one became manifested as Dattatreya because the word Angsha, part and parcel, is used here. paragraph. In Bhagavad Gita, the individual souls are also described as parts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or Super Soul. So why not accept that Dattatreya was one of those parts? Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma are also described as parts. So why not accept all of them as ordinary individual souls? The answer is that the manifestations, plural, of Vishnu and those of the ordinary living entities are certainly all parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, and no one is equal to him. But among the parts and parcels, there are different categories. In the Varaha Purana, it is nicely explained that some of the parts are Svangsa and some are Vibhinangsha. Vibhinangsha parts are called the Jivas, and Svangsa parts are in the Vishnu category. In the Jiva category, Vibhinangsha parts and parcels. In the Jiva category, the Vibhinangsha parts and parcels, there are also gradations. That is explained in the Vishnu Purana, where it is clearly stated that the individual parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord are subject to being covered by the external energy called illusion or Maya. Such individual parts and parcels who can travel to any part of the Lord's creation are called Sarva Gata and are suffering the pangs of material existence. They are proportionately freed from the coverings of ignorance under material existence according to different levels of work and under different influences of the modes of material nature. For example, the sufferings of the jivas situated in the mode of goodness are less than those of the jivas situated in ignorance. Pure Krishna consciousness, however, is the birthright of all living entities, because every living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. The consciousness of the Lord is also in the part and parcel, and according to the proportion to which that consciousness is cleared of material dirt, the living entities are differently situated. In the Vedanta Sutra, the living entities of different gradations are compared to candles or lamps with different candle power. For example, some electric bulbs have the power of 1,000 candles. Some have the power of 500 candles, and some have the power of 100 candles, some 50 candles, etc. But all electric bulbs have light. Light is present in every bulb. But the gradations of light are different. Similarly, there are gradations of Brahman. The Vishnu Shvangsa expansions of the Supreme Lord in different Vishnu forms are like lamps. Expansions of the Supreme Lord. Oops, I read that. I'll read the sentence again. The Vishnu Svangsha expansions of the Supreme Lord in different Vishnu forms are like lamps. Lord Shiva is also like a lamp, and the Supreme Candle power, or the 100% light, is Krishna. The Vishnu Tattva has 94%, Shiva Tattva has 84%, Brahma has 78%, and the living entities are also like Brahma. But in the conditioned state, their power is still more dim. There are gradations of Brahman. No one can deny this fact. Therefore, the word Atmesha Brahma Sambhavan indicates that Dattatreya was directly part and parcel of Vishnu, whereas Durvasa and Soma were parts and parcels of Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. Very detailed. And how to present all of those details in a way that's intelligible. Congratulations, Srila Prabhupada, for his eloquence. Now, one question. What does all this have to do with us? The practical application, or, for my advancements in Krishna consciousness, let's just assume that the compiler of Srimad Bhagavatam and the revealer of Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna himself, there's a purpose behind everything within the Bhagavatam. So what's the purpose? Well, it's not that if I don't understand all this, I can't go back to Godhead. You get an F in your exam and, sorry, Charlie, and another birth, please. So if that's not the case, then why is it there? A principle, starting with stepping back, gradations of living entities. And let's go a little further back. The stages of bhakti from Rupa Goswami's teachings, and confirmed in scripture. There's three stages: Kanishta, Madhyama, and Uttama. And Kanishta worships the deity. I'm just listening this morning, Prabhupada describing. It's not that deity worship means it's lower. It's not the meaning. But those who are beginning bhaktas, they repose faith in the deity form, and gradually by reposing faith and properly following at least the principle of devotion, worshiping the deity, then the coverings of consciousness become slightly elevated, somewhat elevated. And after that stage comes the Madhyama, and then the Madhyama makes distinctions. In addition to the Supreme Lord, there's devotees of the Lord. And then there's those that are innocent, and then there's the demons, or the atheists, or those that are inimical to the personality, to the Supreme Lord. So, in other words, the Madhyama, that's us. We're recommended to make distinctions. Yes, in the Uttama form, there's no distinctions. In the Madhyama form, make distinctions. And then one of the reasons for making distinctions is there's two good reasons. One or three. What Krishna will be pleased. You honor the devotees, Krishna is pleased. So that's good. Another is, so I can avoid the demons and become further contaminated by that unholy association. So that's also good. And then the third is right here. That is, amongst those who are in the devotee category, there are different degrees. Now, where those numbers come from, the 94% and 84%, the explanation at least is traced to our Goswamis describe. So one could research it further. Any one of us could research it further, but that's a simple. These are the conclusions of our acharyas, and Krishna is 100%, and Narayana or Vishnu forms, and then so on down. So back to this topic. This topic means that the Vaishnava etiquette topic of respect proportionate to. And when there's not proper respect, it can be problematic. Not necessarily to the one who's not properly respected, but to the one who's not extending respect. Because the elevated Vaishnava, of course, if it's Travasa Muni, then you got a problem. But otherwise, not offering proper respect, the difficulty comes to the person who doesn't offer proper respect, because it's in the category of a problem, category of an offense. So then requires a spiritual education of what are the ways of proper respect, commensurate with one's position. And then that's the whole subject matter. But first comes that, are there gradations? Yes. Here's the nice purport describing the gradations and how do they come about. So that back to the context of the verse, there's these three sons of Atri and Anasuya. There's some further background. They underwent severe austerities to have this wish, this desire fulfilled. The Supreme Lord appeared, acknowledged their desire, and manifested as these three, made the arrangement for the manifestation of these three sons, representing Vishnu, Lord Shiva, and Lord Brahma. As Yeyatamam Prapajante. So how did Vishnu know? Because he knows. And they qualified themselves to receive these three sons, and so that reciprocation was made. And then there's gradations. So the living entity, the Lord Brahma manifests the fullness capacity of a jiva, and other jivas lesser amount than Brahma. But he's full, at least took the capacity of a jiva. So the gradations, the theme is, back to the question. Is this important why is this in the Bhagavatam? Because there are gradations of living entities, and one should be respectful to living entities in the Madhyama position for sure, mandated by scripture. And what's the criterion? What's the scriptural basis for those distinctions? And what's the criterion? So this is not the full range, but it's an entry point in understanding the principle, gradations of living entities. Then as Bhagavatam further unfolds, there's different histories or different examples of proper respect and the absence of proper respect, and the consequences, the outcome or the consequences of both. So the Bhagavatam is here is setting a standard or a precept, and then how to properly, and the consequences of not properly respecting. And so just back to the question of how is this relevant to us? We're instructed, at least in this our present age, that the Yoga Dharma is the chanting of the holy name. And the chanting of the holy name has the potency of delivering everything on a condition. No offense. And who can claim, I make no offense? Or how can we get to the stage where those of us that are less than perfect can become perfect by properly observing the 10 offenses, or avoiding the 10 offenses? So one of them is disrespecting. That there's so many examples in Scripture. We're going to hear one in relation to when we cover the topic of Nityananda as the Guru Tattva principle. It comes in Adi Lila chapter 5, where, without all the detail, because we'll hear the detail one evening, Krishnadas Kaviraj narrates as the author, he had this experience. The experience was one of the Avadhuta disciples of, or like Nityananda, not living by convention, so thus Avadhuta, Minikaitan Ram. And Minikaitan Ram came into an assembly at the home of Krishnadas Kaviraj, or Krishnadas, and his brother. And there was a festival going on, and while the festival was going on, over there, a Brahmana was engaged in deity worship. And the Brahmana, the biography says that Gunarnava Mishra, the Brahmana, had respect and very high regard for Lord Chaitanya, but not at all for Lord Nityananda, because he was an Avadhuta. And Minikaitan Ram was an intimate disciple of Nityananda. So when Minikaitan Ram came into the assembly, you know the story, when Minikaitan Ram came into the assembly, because he was such an effulgent personality, everyone except two people paid their respects. One of them was Gunarnava Mishra. And it was understood why. At least Krishnadas understood why. So rather than, this is one of these social etiquette, Vaishnava etiquette things. What do you do when somebody is disrespecting a Vaishnava? Even it wasn't like he spoke something nasty, he just didn't respect. Because that's it. So is an aparad. A principle is, here's a nice Prabhupada story. I'll circle back to our topic here. Prabhupada's story was, I've narrated this a few times. There was a situation where Prabhupada was visiting New York. And the procedure, generally speaking, was the devotees greeted him at the airport. And then Prabhupada was, sometimes would speak to some VIP or media person or something right in the lounge of the airport, a designated place. And then he'd get into his car and go to the temple. In this case, the same procedure, and Prabhupada got into the car, but the devotees that were following behind the car got lost. So Prabhupada reached the temple first. And it was at a time when all the devotees were out of the temple except the pujari, Mother Rukmini. She was worshipping Radha Govinda. And the altar at that time, it was kind of a, not a pure white, but a white mixed with strains of other gray and other colors, about 8 inches tall off the floor. So there she was performing arti, ringing the bell and offering incense and lamps and things. And in comes Prabhupada. So she didn't know what to do. She froze. But then instinct said, stop arti. Because there's a rule, when you start, you don't stop. Like, when you're doing a yajna, you don't stop. When you're worshiping a deity, you don't stop. She stopped. She put the paraphernalia down, flat on the floor, paid obeisance to Prabhupada, and got back up and continued the arti. Later, she asked Prabhupada, did she do the right thing? She didn't know if she had made an offense or to the deity or to him. And then Prabhupada told this principle. Normally, you don't discontinue, but in this circumstance, the circumstance of offering obeisances to one spiritual master, in this case, it was her spiritual master, and in another case, it's an exalted Vaishnava, you stop the deity worship. So he didn't. Gunarava Mishra just continued his deity worship. And so there's brothers. Krishna Das, Surya Das, if I can remember correctly, was the name of his brother. So Krishna Das spoke up. In that right in the middle of everything, but at an appropriate time, he spoke up and chastised. And then when he chastised, Surya Das took his side. So Krishna Das chastised his brother, and saying, you're like the second Romaharshan Sutta, and you're going to fall because of that offense. And the narration reads, and he fell. It doesn't say like kaboom, but, he fell from that moment of not acknowledging, I've made a mistake. I should have respected Miniketan Ram. But he held some attitude towards Nityananda. So not accepting Nityananda, that's a problem. Not respecting Nityananda or the representatives of Nityananda or the Vaishnavas that are engaged in this important activity of taking the message of Krishna as Lord Nityananda, as the Guru Tattva personified, did, and not respecting those that do that service, or in different ways, disrespecting. Not respecting is disrespecting. So with that very night, it came your question of when did this happen? How old was Krishna Das when this happened? You're going to find out.
Couldn't find out.
Okay, you tried?
A little bit.
Okay.
Exhausted.
Okay. I need to reword the statement. Raghunath Das Goswami was in Vrindavan for 45 years, but it's not that he spoke on the topics of Lord Chaitanya with Krishna Das in the audience for 45 years. At some point, it could have been. And so there's something, when you, and thinking that question, there's some history that at some point Krishna Das came, and he was given accommodation very near to the place where Raghunath Das was staying. And so then he could hear Raghunath Das describe Gaura Lila. So whatever that number is, we don't know. But not necessarily, but for 45 years. Probably not. "45 years is a long time." So Nityananda, appeared in his dream that very night, in Krishna Das's dream, and commended him for his chastising both his brother and Gunarnava Mishra, and pointed in the direction of Vrindavan and said, go once to Vrindavan, make that your residence. So when he woke up, it was still, the dead of night, and he didn't wait. He just, he didn't say Haribol, he just took off. Another example of shelter of Lord Chaitanya coming through Lord Nityananda. So back to our topic here. Understanding the position of expansions of Lord Vishnu and expansions of Lord Shiva and expansions of the living etities, and respecting those expansions of the living entities appropriately. There's an etiquette involved. Supposing one doesn't know. What did Prabhupada deal with persons that didn't know? He was just very tolerant, without examples. So many examples. But he started after some training and some purification, he started, tightening the screw, explaining expectations, and letting people know by facial expression or by his words or by silence or something that he was not approving. But even so, before that stage, he said nothing, because a person that just doesn't know better, they're not expected to know. But once there's responsibility that comes to us who are practicing for some time, and we should know. One of the ways to know is you read Prabhupada's books. And circling back to Gopal Bhatta's survey of how people are reading Prabhupada's books. What I heard from him later was the results of that survey was not so different. Some difference, I don't know the detail, but not so different from the GBC when the survey was done with the GBC. Because supposing you get busy, then what are you going to do? Whether it's whatever your station or service is, so persons that have responsibility, it's not okay. Just, I'm too busy, I don't have time. A person is particularly a person in a leadership role, they have to set an example. To set an example, you have to know the difference between this and that. Anyway, back to Anasuya and Atri and their 3 offspring. Very interesting. First chapter, Canto 4, in case you're having to research this sometime in the future, that's where it comes. Partial incarnation. But still in the Vishnu category, or Shiva Tattva category, or Jiva Tattva category. Let's see if there's some discussion.
Raj, there was a sentence in the purport that I would like to request your clarification on. Prabhupada said, such individual parts and parcels who can travel to any part of the Lord's creation are called Sarvagata and are suffering the pangs of material existence. So I'm assuming this is referring to the fact that living entities can be found in any part of the material creation, but not that us as individual living entities have that kind of freedom. We have pretty restricted freedom in terms of where we can travel.
Well, there's different ways of travel. Samsara is one of the ways to travel. And Narada Muni is another way to travel. That's certainly an exception, not the rule. Samsara.
Another question, Gumaraj, on this topic of Vaishnava etiquette. There are so many wonderful opportunities provided to us to receive training and education. And I noticed that in a large congregation like ours, there can be people who choose over a sustained period of time not to take advantage of these opportunities. So I'm thinking, what is mine to do? And a couple of things come to mind. One is, in my own life, to have this relentless pursuit of refining my Vaishnava etiquette, not only learning, but also sharing, because that reinforces my learning. And another thing is lovingly, encouragingly inviting those persons to take advantage of these opportunities without seeming forceful. And yet, I see that over the years, that's only been so successful. There are people who are very active in service and have rough edges, and they just consistently choose not to show up for training opportunities. So the problem just continues and continues. So if you would please clarify, what is mine to do besides these two things that came to my mind?
Let's hear the punchline of the question again. What's the punchline?
What else can I do?
What can you do?
Yes. What is within my power and influence?
A few things. Purity is the force. So the more pure, the more the effectiveness of speaking or not speaking, doing or setting an example. And so purity is the force. So that's something internally. Second, bring to the attention of those who are in an authority position where they may choose to influence the individual one way or another, or align the service position better with the person's capacity. And I could give some examples, but I'm reluctant to give some examples because this is being recorded. But there's a situation that, several of us in the room are aware of, and it's still going on. It's very unpleasant. There's a track record of abuse of authority for someone that's on the one hand, but on the other hand. So let's see what happens. But it's in the works of sending up the flagpole to an authority that may be able to do something about an abusive situation. Respecting that authority and limitations that anybody has to help somebody that's being abusive, to stop it. So that's back to the question. That's something that can be done. When there's another situation at another place, and there are a few persons who are aware of other situation in another place. And they're, respectfully trying to help the devotee that's unsuited for having authority for different reasons to step back from that authority position. And, it sounds like it's likely to happen. That doesn't mean their personality is going to change because they don't have that service anymore, but will no longer be in a position of, carrying a stick and whacking people. They have their personality. And then in that case, it's between the guru of that person and the person. And is it possible? It's certainly possible. But is it, there's no guarantee. Training and education can happen at any stage. It's better if it happens at an early stage. So back to your question, what is it that you can do? So purity, and not in a whining and complaining and finger pointing mood, but inform somebody in a higher authority position that maybe there's something they can do. At least they should be aware. And then, sometimes there's a third. Sometimes it's just accepting the situation, knowing that there's going to be some damage downstream, because the tendency of this or that or the other is likely to continue. And I've seen, and I have, I've been on the receiving end or something, and it's not nice. So shrug your shoulders. That is, leave it up to Krishna. I guess another is you pray to Krishna for someone, that Krishna, please turn on the light, because this devotee somehow is not aware. Okay. Anything else? Sorry for being indirect in responding to this question, but I don't think it's appropriate to use specific examples and names and things. More principle based. You have something? Yeah.
It was from yesterday's morning class. It's about the question answer time discussion about envy. My thought and my experience is that certain things I have been working, and this been going on for years.
This is you personally.
Yeah. So, I have a stronger speech. I have been working on it for years, and I couldn't do anything much about it. And what to speak of envy, I don't know how much time it will take. So, I was thinking what to do. We just keep accepting and going on, or that's a dilemma I'm having in my mind.
Well, envy is a going back to the fall of the living entity coming in, raga dvesha samutena dvandva mohena bharata. It's pretty fundamental. Have a body, that's a flag. Inside, raga and dvesha. That you're acknowledging it. So whatever the gradation of that unwanted characteristic is there, chances are, like everything else, that there's up and down, sometimes more, sometimes less. And when it becomes acute, it's like lust or pride or something. It can be shocking to the person when it comes out. Wow. So there's two parts. The one is the why, and then what to do. So the why is, it's just part of having misused free will, and therefore here we are with a body that has these characteristics, or the covering of the soul that has these characteristics. So just be accepting of that's just the way it is, and then by the process of sadhana bhakti, be confident that purification will take place. And then a third is somebody that knows you and understands you, and is as a friend, it knows and understands another person, someone that's in that category, and you share confidentially, this is a struggle, and help. When you see the door is open, please say. Maybe, be discriminating about circumstance to say, because it's painful, but please say in the proper way, in a respectful way, and so that I get a tap on the shoulder that reminds me of what I already know, but we get carried away. And then I guess another, it's don't fall into the category of shame, because that's debilitating. Any capacity to overcome something that's formidable, shame, it just drains the capacity to deal properly with it. So that goes back to the body is having an embodiment means there's a flag. So just acknowledge it. Don't obsess about it, because that's there are people that obsess about it, their shortcomings or their unwanted things, and boo-hoo and woe is me, and depression. It's very unwholesome. So what's the substitute for unwholesome? Bhakti has the power. Yeah.
On the topic of respect, Maharaj, and expressing respect, and where I want to, my question is along the lines of perhaps over expressing respect, or the image that comes to my mind immediately is, when I initially started consciousness, I remember the day I wore a dhoti for the first time, devotees started trying to touch my feet.
Oh boy.
And, when I experience, not necessarily for myself, but when I observe that there is, giving respect more than due, for example, Rupa Goswami explains in the fifth verse of Nectar of Instruction, that we offer in our mind respect to one who's chanting the holy name, offer, gradations of how you express respect. So I get a little repulsed by seeing overexpression of respect. And
don't wear a dhoti.
Therefore, so my question is: how should we consider that, and what are some instructions around that? one thing that I'm remembering is Jiva Goswami's Kutinati explanation in Bhakti Sandarbha, that Kutinati is where inside there isn't respect, but externally we offer respect. That's how he defined it there. So that stayed with me when I read it. Anyway, I'd like to hear from you, Maharaj.
This is subtle. So it's a simple answer is depends. Depends on, so like Prabhupada, great, he had expectations from others according to their position. And because of his being an acharya role, he had the power, had the authority when to instruct and when to remain silent. Just tolerate. So the excessive respect, it's repulsive, but on the other hand, that somebody is neophyte and not understanding, so it's okay. And then expectations, and then so depending upon the person, so it depends, depending upon the person, in a way that's not embarrassing the person socially. A conversation, a one-on-one conversation that says whatever it needs to say. In one sense it's me, in another sense it's a principle. But this makes me uncomfortable. The other is another kind of uncomfortable, but the excessive is a kind of uncomfortable. And it can be just a declaration, or it can be a question. Do you see circumstances where you have done like that with others, or with me, or something? Is that like, no, I don't do that? So you probe a little bit to see. That depends on the person, how you. But in confidence situation, as you're, in the frame of your question, my mind went to three situations that I'm currently involved in, and it's discerning how to communicate something like that. That takes it takes culture, it takes character. But once some thought is how can something like that be communicated best, then it puts may put a strain in a relationship, but you're willing to go down that strain in the relationship because it's good for both of us. It's good for the person, good for me. And there's some cases where it's like the example that you gave is clear, but there's some other cases that may just be perception that doesn't really match what's going on. So then seeking clarity, and then depends on the certainty of excessiveness. Whether my perception is like this. Do you see that too? It's a dialogue. It's not confrontation. It depends upon the person, but just by bringing up the potential of some discomfort, the person will be more careful. That if the person is a little subtle, then they'll be more careful. So, depends.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. 2 questions. So Lord Brahma, a Jiva Tattva, is also able to have his partial expansion. We hear, Lord Vishnu was Dattatreya and Lord...
Well, there's the example. So why not? No, what does partial expansion mean? It's not like, he divided himself or expanded himself, and then over there is the less than him, but this, a facsimile of him, kind of fuzzy. A fact copy that's kind of fuzzy. It could be a bhava expansion. That's another concept of expansion. Certainly that's something that's within our Gaudiya Vaishnava teachings. Bhava expansions. So it's not like, the jiva becomes, a different jiva, or expands and becomes 2 jivas, that kind of expansion. Someone that carries powers like, and that power like is invested in another entity. It's like a bhava expansion kind of thing. Is it usual? Well, depends on what you want to define as a partial expansion. You have 2 boys. As a mother, you have a certain mood, and they're making decisions that may not align with your mood, but they may be strongly influenced by your mood. So it's not exactly, it's not the same, but it's in the category of, that through not just genes, you pass on a gene pool to your descendants, but your mood, and your way of conducting yourself may be passed on. It's not the same. So exactly what does what does a partial expansion mean? That's a nice question. I bet our acharyas have answers to that question. Would you like the assignment of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur generally has answers to stuff like this.
Okay. Reach out to Prabhu.
Huh? He's passing.
I have another question, Maharaj.
No, but you do, as an assignment for tomorrow morning's class, you look. I can look it up too, and maybe there's nothing, and they know there's nothing in the. I know somebody that's like a super researcher, and they're like fastidious. If there's something, they'll find it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to ask them because, I don't want to, but it's something that should be reasonable. What does it mean? Mm-hmm. Partial expansion. Would do it the other way, partial expansion of Lord Shiva. What's that? Partial expansion of Lord Vishnu. There's expansions, the Kala and Swangsa. What's a partial expansion of Vishnu? It's a good question. What does it mean? Another place besides Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, a probably very good place is Laghu Bhagavatamrita. I'll match you. You research, I'll research. We'll see what we come up with. Next question.
So the spectrum of Kanishta, Madhyama, Uttama, as you mentioned, when we know, so that we can appropriately offer respect.
Yeah.
So when it's on the other end of the spectrum,
which is,
somebody who's probably on a Kanishta level, is the thinking that, they are doing as best as they can.
Yeah.
That is their capacity. Is there like I'm wondering if there's a blind spot to that kind of a thinking. Am I missing?
No. I mean, why are you asking that question? How many times respect goes to all living entities, even an ant? So, the Kanishta person, respect, although they're in the Kanishta phase, they're engaged in devotional service. Otherwise, they're an ant, or they're an animal. But if they're engaged in devotional service in the Kanishta stage, that respect goes to the bhakti that they're carrying, however they got it. And the bhakti that they're carrying, however they got it, they may be doing bad stuff, along with, some bhakti. Then it depends on the bad stuff. How bad is the bad stuff? Okay. I had a sense she's got something.
And something in relation to what Mataji asked, Vashana Mataji. I have faced a few devotees getting a bit upset or angry when I use the term senior devotees. Like if I say something like, let's give preference to this person because they're a senior devotee.
Yeah.
And then there are others who say, or who ask me, how do you define a senior devotee? Because devotional service is a continuum, and how come you are seeing some as senior and some as younger? How do you know what's in their heart? This kind of questions come. This is just, it kind of feels very, I find it disrespectful to even compare.
No, it's not disrespectful.
Yeah, no, I meant when the question comes like that, is that disrespectful to? Because
it's disrespectful to whom? To you or to the? You keep it simple. Don't get mental. Keep it simple. The mind can make something simple very complicated. Keep it simple. From your heart or from scriptural example, one that I like is Yudhisthira coming before Dhritarashtra was very respectful. He's elder. So on what basis? His age. And there's other, but that's one. And Lord Nityananda was 12 years older than Lord Chaitanya. Or Balaram was the elder brother, and Krishna deferred to his elder brother. It wasn't by a big amount of time, but he was the elder brother. So deference went to the senior. So they're different when's biological age or when one began practicing devotional service. And what their activity is today, it's a whole other thing. So, but still senior devotee.
Yeah.
And then comes, how do you deal with supposing, there's many details. Supposing somebody started, but then they deviated and they went like off the deep end. And, some people become inimical or something. So they become destructive or they become vilifiers or they specifically vilify particular persons or situations. And they become really vocal, and that's going on currently. That's going on. the Prabhupada was poisoned, and it's still going on. What? It's still going on? Yes, it's still going on. I didn't know it, but Bhakti, Brahmatirtha explained. And where is it coming from? This is where it's coming from. So anyway, there's a response, but that's different than someone that may have had a problem, that someone that's got a stick in their hand or a gun in their hand, and they're waving the gun. They want to shoot someone. That's not a senior devotee. It's an offender. So discriminate. So, but your question is, some people say, on what basis? So there's different bases. There's senior in this, these categories of ways. And even if they're off, they're not on, they're senior, and they're to be respected. That's culture. Doesn't mean they're right, but they're senior. And deference goes to senior. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki